Good. Good afternoon, everyone. I see it's 2 o'clock. There will be people who will continue to join us, but let's not delay the webinar. In our experience from the previous webinar, we found that our time was almost too short. In fact, it was too short, and we'd rather get going. So welcome. I would like to say good afternoon, friends, colleagues, and alumni. Welcome to the second webinar in the Region Connect Future Fit series. If you haven't already, please remember to register on the platform and participate in the Region Connect conversations. They promise to be very exciting and also as follow-ups of the various webinars that we are hosting. My name is Ronelle Blom, and I'm the Academic Dean of Region Business School, and it gives me great pleasure to again welcome Ms. Cindy Norcott to the platform. For those of you who joined us last time, in the first webinar, you will know that Ms. Norcott is highly experienced in the field of human capital management. I think that's the right way of putting it, Cindy. But she's the CEO of two very successful recruitment agencies, and I can promise you she has seen it all and has helped prepare hundreds of candidates for the dreaded interviews. We were just laughing about it just now because we were wondering, is there ever a good interview? But I think Cindy is going to talk us through that this afternoon. And she's going to show us how to put our best feet forward during an interview. So not only is Cindy a consummate professional, she's also the author of a book titled How to Be Unstoppable. It sounds fascinating, and I think we must all try and get hold of a copy. So before I hand over to Cindy, I just want to share with you that there's again a prize this afternoon, and the prize is a mentoring session with Cindy. And again, like last time, the prize will be determined by the good questions that you're asking. So please type all your questions in the chat so that we have a record and that also that we can make an informed decision about the best questions. Please note that we won't take any questions in any other way. We can only accept questions in the chat. Otherwise, it takes too long and then we don't get through our proceedings. Also, just before we start, I want to indicate to you that every participant will receive an ebook as a gift and a certificate of attendance this afternoon. So with those few words, I would then like to welcome Cindy and hand over to her. Thanks, Cindy.
Thank you so much, Dr. Blom. Good afternoon, everybody. It's really, really wonderful to be here today. And I'm talking about something that most of us dread. We all want it. We all want to go for an interview, but when a time comes for it, it fills us with dread. And as Dr. Blom said to me earlier, she said, you know, the problem is we can't relax. We get so nervous, and that's when all the trouble starts. So I want to share with you some tips on how to go about the interview so that when you are in the interview, actually in a really good space, you're putting your best foot forward. This is your opportunity to shine. And I can only speak from my own experience. Straight out of university, I went for my first interview. And well, firstly, my first interview was an unannounced one. I walked into some of the recruitment agencies along with two friends. And we said, we're here for interviews. And they said, have you made appointments? And we're like, no, we're just here to drop off CVs. And I remember the looks on their faces. We were completely unprofessional, and we didn't even know that we were. And then I remember finishing university and wanting to become a recruiter. I went for the interview, and the lady who interviewed me very graciously, I must say, she asked me, what 5 qualities make a good recruiter? And I sat there, I was completely dumbfounded and unprepared. And I just said, you must like people. And she said, she just looked at me and I could see that she was not impressed. I was not prepared. I couldn't even think of 2 or 3 reasons why somebody would want to be a recruiter. So I think I learned the hard way. And then also I would get myself into such a state that I would end up being all blotchy. I could barely breathe. I couldn't show my personality or my sense of humor. And what they saw was literally a cardboard cutout of myself. So I really felt in my first few interviews, I messed up. Now I've been working as a recruiter. I've had my own business, which is now turned 27 years old yesterday. So you can imagine how many thousands and thousands of interviews I've done. So I've literally seen it all. I often think I could write a book on what not to do. And I'm not going to talk too much about the not to do's, but definitely more about the to do's, because we really want to go in and we don't want to mess up, and we don't want to walk away going, I really blew that opportunity. I had it there, and why didn't I know how to answer that question? Why wasn't I prepared? And, you know, it's funny, we can go to tech and varsity and college, we can, and sometimes we don't get taught these things. So a big thank you to Regent for putting this together. I think it's a life skill. It really is a life skill. So, you know, to me, an interview is a conversation between people. So if we sort of calm it down, suddenly we're realizing, wait, we can do a conversation. I'm going to be putting my best foot forward, and somebody's going to ask me questions. I'm going to answer the questions, but also I'm going to ask them questions, because it's not just, I'll take any job. If you accept me, I'll take it. But is this the right job for me? Even if you are desperate. I think that's the impression we really want to get across. So the first thing is, when we go for the interview, we actually have to be armed with the belief that I am the best person for the job. No disrespect to the other delegates or candidates or applicants, but we've got to believe I'm applying for this job and I know that I can do this job. So that comes across, because any negativity or uncertainty can really, you know, sort of come across really badly. And the one thing that puts an interviewer off immediately is desperation. We can see it a mile away. And often the people who are desperate, who say, I'll take any job, just choose me, that's not seen in a good light. It just doesn't come off well. So we want to be as natural as possible. We want to actually do some deep breathing before the interview, so that our lungs are full and we can sound clear and confident, not this like tinny little voice, you know, and come across as being somebody who is, you know, really just happy to be there, energized. And this is our golden opportunity to shine, even if we are timid and shy and insecure and scared. So the first step before even going for the interview is also just having a little bit of research on yourself, knowing your strengths and weaknesses. And, you know, when you've applied for the job, knowing why I think I'd be good for this particular job. Okay, I think that's super, super important. So how can you meet the employer's needs? How can you fill this position? How could you suit the position? And I think for some people, if you're not a natural conversationalist, or if you know you get incredibly terrified, maybe it's time to start doing some practicing. You could literally videotape yourself. I know that's an old word, videotape, but record yourself on your phone. You could do a mock interview. I know that some people even go to recruiters or to counselors and practice the interview, so that when they go, they've already experienced it. Because if you've never ever had an interview, you might be thinking, oh my gosh, I don't know what to expect. So, you know, I think it's quite important. I'm going to go through some questions with you, some common questions. Now, you'll never be asked all those questions, but I can guarantee some of them will come up in the interview. So at least now, if you've practiced them and you know the answers, it's not like learning word for word, but it's just having them within you, so that, oh yes, I know the answer to this one, and then you can go ahead. So it might be worth practicing with a buddy, practicing in front of the mirror, or even just getting yourself, you know, somebody like a career counselor to help you. So we only have one chance to make that good first impression. It generally takes about 7 seconds. We walk into that room, and imagine you open the door, you walk in, and then you sit down. You've said hello. You might have shaken hands. I don't know what we do now in a COVID world. If you meet in person, and this is where awkwardness comes in. You don't know whether to fist pump, shake hands, bow, konnichiwa. You know, we don't know what to do. So I think that's also quite difficult for that first impression. But we want to put that best foot forward. We need to blow our own trumpet, not in an aggressive way, but in a confident, positive, energized way, to say, I'm so glad here. I'm here. I'm so excited for the opportunity. That's so important. So what do? We walk in the room and we smile. We greet everybody. So say the receptionist there, hi, it's wonderful to be here. My name is, and I'm here for the interview with a person. When you walk in, mention their names, shake their hands if that's appropriate. You know, when they say sit down, thank you so much. And even when you answer questions, try and remember their name and just put their name in. Believe it or not, the most beautiful sound to anybody is the sound of their own name. You don't want to say it the whole time, but you want to say it every now and then, you know, during the interview. You want to sit up straight. And, you know, a lot of people who are body language experts say you should mirror the other person. So say I speak very fast, which I do, and you speak very slowly. You might want to speed it up just a little bit so that it feels like there's a match. Or the other way around, I speak very slowly, you speak fast, and you might say, let me match that person's speed. If I speak softly, you might soften it a little bit. If I speak loudly, just so that that person feels connected to you, that, you know, this is somebody, if they cock their head to the side, you might want to do that a little bit, not completely like a little parrot, but just showing some kind of like connection with a person. We've had people, and I'm going to give you a few examples of what not to do. They arrive in reception for an interview. The first thing they do is take their shoes off. Then they grab their phone, they make a phone call, they play games on their phone. I've had people bring their mom for an interview. I've had people bring a friend. I even had a mom answer the questions for her son in an interview. I just thought that was hysterical. But there's certain things we won't do. We won't fidget. We won't play with our hair. We won't cover our mouths. Some people who interview people often consider themselves body language experts. So say you said to me, why did you leave your last job? And I go, I think it was, and I get all shifty. My eyes move from side to side. And I go, I left for a better opportunity. You can imagine how that body language comes across. It looks like if I cover my mouth, it might give the impression I'm lying. If I scratch my nose, even if it's itchy, it might give the impression I'm lying. And if my eyes are shifting, especially if they're shifting to the left, sorry, to the right, it means that I'm possibly trying to make up something rather than remembering something from the timeline in the past. Now, bearing in mind, we don't have to get that complicated, but we really want to just have really positive body language. Now, remember, you're nervous and you've got a pen in your hand. You don't want to knock your pen. You don't want to shake your foot. You want to really come across very calm. Maybe just have your hands in your lap. I think that's an important thing. And remember, in an interview, you don't have to pretend you know everything. It's okay sometimes to say, I don't know the answer to that, or to be comfortable with silence and take a pause and go, let me just think about that. And then go, okay, I think I've got an answer. Sometimes people blurt out the first thing that comes to mind. And then afterwards they go home and go, I can't believe I said that, because you will be asked things you haven't been prepared for. And then, so why are we being interviewed? What's the reason? We are being interviewed by somebody who's representing an organization to find out if they can work with us. So the questions that are coming into the mind of the interviewer is, do we like this person? Can we tolerate working with this person? Can they do the job? Here's the most important thing. Do they want to do the job? Because I can do bookkeeping, but I don't want to do it. But then I go for the interview and say, yeah, no, I've been a bookkeeper. What excites you about it? No, you can tell when somebody's motivated or not. Here's a few questions that people I know in business ask. Can I build an empire with this new hire? So if you ask yourself, I'm applying for a job. Am I going to add massive value to this company? And then another question they ask is, what will this new hire add to the DNA of our team that isn't already there? So what are you bringing that's uniquely you? And that's why I think it's so, so important to have the self-awareness. Do you honestly know your strengths and your weaknesses? Do you know what your genius is, what your X factor is? What is the one thing that you were born to do? If you've got that, and you can come across an interview to say, do you know what I've got that I think will make such a difference to this organization? Is that I've got this amazing electric ability to add energy into a room, or I have a smile that would, literally launch a rocket ship, or, I have endless patience with customers. I don't get angry. I can empathize and I can put myself in their shoes, and, I love to solve people's problems and I'm there for them. So I think I'd be great for customer service. And let me give you some examples of where I've done that, and that comes across really, really, I think quite relatable. Now, the biggest challenge we've got, and I really, really do understand where many of you are coming from, if you are feeling desperate, concerned, worried, there are so few jobs available. We're in a COVID time, we're in a tough economy, and what we're noticing out there is, especially for more junior candidates or candidates with not that many skills, there's not enough work. So, You know, when we think of interviews, often we go into a cold sweat. The thought of an interview is surrounded by fear and uncertainty. But the situation is, for many of us, it's almost impossible to find jobs because we're up against so many people. And I saw a statistic that about 47% of jobs are at risk of automation. So within the next 3 to 5 years, the job we are doing, if it's fairly low level or if it can be done by a computer, it probably will be done by a computer. So the challenge in our minds is always, how do I skill myself up? How am I preparing myself for this future world of work that hasn't even arrived yet? Because right now I might say, I'm a bookkeeper and I can do books, but you know, the bookkeeping packages are becoming so sophisticated, they can actually collate things together. At some point, companies might say, we don't really need a full-time bookkeeper. We only need somebody to do a little bit of data processing. So that's also quite scary. Now you go in for an interview. When you go in, you bring a pen and a notepad. You bring a number of questions that you've already prepared to ask, which we'll go through just now. You'll bring a few copies of your CV, and you'll bring even a portfolio. Say, for instance, you're a graphic designer, you would bring that portfolio with you if that's appropriate. Maybe even a copy of all your certificates, like your matric certificate, your ID, your qualification, some reference letters, which many people disregard, but it's nice to have them. It's nice to show you prepared and organized and that you are ready for action. I think that's so, so important. But now, before you even get to the interview, the most important thing is, you know what a lot of people do? They arrive at an interview, often late because they didn't know where they were going. They thought they knew. And they don't know who they're being interviewed by. If you ask them, tell us about the job you're applying for, they go, I don't really know. So this is where many people are coming unstuck and they're not putting their best foot forward. So let's just say you go through an agency, like I own an agency. If I brief you to say you're going to ABC company on Friday at 9 o'clock for the interview, I would say you are the job title is graphic designer or key account executive. I would send you a copy of the job description, or if I don't have a copy, I would go through it with you so that you're not ever going there and going, I had no idea that the job was this, because you want nobody to waste your time and you don't want to go in unprepared. So you want to know who you're being interviewed by, what their title is. Now imagine you think, okay, this is my opportunity. You walk into a room, you're expecting to be interviewed by one person and there's 5 people in a boardroom and it's a massive panel interview, or they start interviewing you and at a certain time they go, great, it's time for your test or your typing test or your computer test or your practical assessment, and you go, I had no idea. That would be quite tormenting for most people. So you want to research the company. So and drop that into the interview. You know, so let me give you an example. So they say, do you have any questions? And you could say, yes. 2 nights ago, when I was researching your company, I was fascinated to hear that you've got 4 branches in the country. Do you have any other plans for expansion? That could be quite a good. So what you've done is you've shown them that you retained some information, but that you were interested enough to find out. And I think that's so important. So you want to know about the company, Google the person who's interviewing you. I remember years ago, the first time somebody said to me, I Googled you, I was like, you did what? And, you know, I was quite flattered by the fact that they'd done some research on me and wanted to work for me specifically, or that's what they said. But it went a long way to building favor between me and them in the interview. So you want the company, you want the person or people, you want to know who they are and what title. Because imagine saying to the interviewer, so what do you do here? And the person goes, I'm the MD, I'm the founder, I'm the CEO. And you're like, okay, I didn't know that. Also, the next thing is to understand the industry. So let's just say the company is in chemical manufacturing or it's in a packaging industry. What are the challenges in that industry? Is the industry growing, declining? Is it stagnant? Also in the company, where's the company? What are you reading about the company? Have you Googled any other information, not just their website, but there could be some media information about the company. Go onto their Facebook page, LinkedIn, just to find out a little bit more about the company so that you get a really strong feel for who they are. Because remember that a lot of companies are looking for people who are going to fit into the culture. A lot of people can do a job of a graphic designer or a bookkeeper, So it's not whether you've got 5 years more or 1 year more. It's more like this person, we get the feeling that this person's going to fit into our tribe because they've got something about them that we feel we can relate to, or they've got something that they can add. Often it's not about, oh, they have they've got 1% more on the Excel test or 2% more on the zero assessment. It's actually got a lot more to do with that feeling of how they're going to fit into the culture. Do they look like the kind of person that would fit in and work with how we do things around here? And that's got nothing to do with not being diverse. It's about the person, it's about their qualities, it's their character, the kind of companies they worked for before, the jokes they make, the kind of vibe you get off the person. I think it's so, so important. Now, I often have candidates arrive and they're 10 minutes late, they're harassed, they're frazzled, there was no parking, there was traffic jam, load shedding. If you think about it, how Murphy's Law would have it that on the day you've got an interview, there's load shedding or car accident. So just don't put yourself on the back foot. Get there plenty of time, but don't arrive in the office too early. So let's just say you got there and it's 40 minutes early and you think, oh my gosh, don't arrive and be there 40 minutes early. Walk in 10 to 15 minutes early. That's considered on time. If you just arrive at, say your interview is at 9 and you arrive at 9 or 9:01, you're actually considered to be late. A lot of the times when you go for an interview, they will say, okay, great, here you go, here's the application form. Now you've got to fill in a form. Just some advice on that. You know how often I've had candidates being quite snooty and disrespectful, going, nobody told me about this, I don't have time for this. Just be careful. On that form, there's permission for them to do checks on you, which you have to sign. Often people can tell a lot about your handwriting and your spelling and the few little short questions that you answer. And some people see it as a humility test. You know, in any job we do, we really want people who are humble, who are prepared to say, I'll do what it takes. And if your first impression is, I'm not ready, I don't want to do a form, how would you be in the job being asked to do a surprise task? So what we do is we walk in early, and we are friendly to everyone. We are friendly to the receptionist. Good morning, Jane. How are you? It's so lovely to see you. I'm here for the interview. So we befriend everybody along the way. And as we leave, we thank them. Thank you so much. It was lovely to be here, and a really positive interaction all round. So I think it's so, so important just to be professional. If you are now nervous before the interview and you're a smoker, try not to smoke before the interview, because often you're stuck in a small room. And then guess what they smell is your cigarette smoke. A lot of companies are anti-smokers. So now imagine if you say, no, I hardly ever smoke, and all they can smell on you is cigarette smoke. It also doesn't always give a fresh impression, okay? So I think the important thing is to understand that it's not just in person at the moment. So right now, what a lot of companies are doing is an initial telephonic interview, which would be a short telephone chat, maybe 15 to 20 minutes. So they'll interview you. Sometimes they won't even schedule it. They'll just phone you and say, you've applied, can we just ask you a few questions? And then based on that, they'll decide whether you go into the in-person or Zoom interview. So just be mindful. If somebody does say, we want to interview you at 2 o'clock, we will phone you at 2. Make sure you go to a place where you can speak privately, and you can also speak openly. You know how often I've interviewed people on the phone and they're whispering and they're in the loo and they're running out the office, and it's terrible because that doesn't give a great impression, and it's also very uncomfortable. So you want to be calm, you want to be ready, you want to have a pen and paper, and you want to be able to not be interrupted and distracted. The other thing is some companies are not doing phone interviews, but what they're doing is they actually are doing video interviews. So I'll give you an example. They'll ask you 3 to 5 questions. Tell us your name, tell us what you do, and give us 3 reasons why we should hire you, something like that. So now you've got a video and you've got a video yourself. And that's really, really important that you've got to convey energy. You've got to convey positivity. So it's important you've got a good background, that you're not in the bathroom doing a selfie. Hopefully get somebody to video you, and really sell yourself, because often a lot of people, they'll just sit quite demurely and calmly, but they really aren't putting their best foot forward in that. Also, what I found has been unusual is how many people we asked to send us a little video clip of themselves, and 4, 5, 6 days later, we're still saying, please send us your video so we can send it to the client. If you can, get it done as soon as possible. You know what happens? Sometimes people respond to an advert, or they respond too late. So imagine how you say, sure, and about 8 working days later, you send me your video. By then, the client might have hired a person. So even though your video might have been sensational, you sent it too late. So just be careful of that. But now let's get on to Zoom. We're all on Zoom right now. Who would have thought a year ago, exactly a year ago yesterday, that we were told we would be in lockdown? And Zoom is the new technology. And over this last year, I have seen so many people lose jobs before starting. So what happens? They get onto Zoom. They don't know where to look. Their dog and their cat, and it's literally a dog show. But the thing is, they don't know. So what's happening is, remember, the employer is judging you in your first 7 seconds. Now, in the first 7 seconds, you've got somebody going, can you help me? I'm really bad on the computer. I don't know what I'm doing. Is this on? Is this on? Can you hear me? And then guess what? That person thinks, oh my gosh, this person's incompetent. They lack confidence. They're insecure. They're not computer literate. Goodbye. So just remember that, be prepared. Ask somebody to show you how Teams work, how Zoom works, so that when you're there, you're sitting there calmly, relaxed, and please do yourself a favor. Wear something, a nice top, or, because I know some people have dressed really badly for these. You don't want to be in your nightgown or something, thinking that somebody can't see you, or it doesn't matter. I think it's so, so important. Try and ensure that you are in a place with a stable internet connection. You know how many people, I don't know if this is intentional or not, the interview asks a really difficult question, and all of a sudden the candidate's gone. And then they come back 10 minutes later and they say, sorry, it was a bad connection. But then they're very well prepared with the answer. So I don't know, but you don't want to be that. So again, in a Zoom meeting or Teams meeting, you want to be in a place where you can be calm, where you can actually focus on the interview and treat it as you would a face-to-face interview. That's so, so important. And then I think a lot of people are always saying, how do I prepare for an interview? What are they going to ask me? Well, I've had clients ask very, very odd questions. But there are certain questions. What we're trying to do is uncover you. So I think interviewing is amazing. I love interviewing people because I see a person as like a little present, and they've got this bow on top. And then you take the bow apart, you ask all these questions, and there inside you see the gift. So to me, interviewing shouldn't be acrimonious, it shouldn't be threatening, it should be a pleasant exchange between two people. I'm curious, I want to know a little bit more about you, and by the end you should feel that I've got all the gems out of you, not all the horrible bits, but a balanced view of who you are. So people say a question, I'm going to give you some questions that I think are important. Like one of the first ones, which is an icebreaker. So often people will say, they'll start off the interview with a bit of an icebreaker. How are you? Did you find us okay? How's the weather? How's your job hunting? Let me tell you, that's a question I ask people. How's your job hunting? Now you get two camps. You get the one that goes, it's dreadful. It's shocking. The worst 6 months of my life. They're negative. They're down. And it's true. That's how they're feeling. Then you get others who go, you know what? It's been such an awesome opportunity. Obviously, I'm really, really looking for a job. But you know what I've done? I've volunteered for a charity. I've gotten involved in this community. I've learned so many things. My house is spick and span. I've built relationships with people. I've done so many awesome things in this time. Wow, what two different perspectives. Which one would you want to hire? The negative person or the positive person? So yeah, I think that's super, super important to just really have all those nice answers to basic little starting points there. Tell me about yourself. Now, I once had a lady who walked in and she was a bit late. Tell me about yourself. And she said, oh my gosh, I'm going through the worst divorce. I'm on hectic antidepressants. They want to take my kids away. I'm a mess. Now, the shame, that was probably true. And not to belittle anyone who's going through a situation like that. So there's a fine line in an interview. What truth do you tell and what do you not tell? Because if people really knew all the stuff that you're going through, they might not want to hire you because, people are scared of problems. And let's be honest, right now, in the time we're in, most people have problems. So like I said, you want to put your best foot forward. So maybe you could say, gosh, it's been quieter here. It's been very, very interesting. But let me tell you a little bit about myself. So start with general stuff. I'm the middle of 3 daughters, and I'm married with 2 daughters, and I live in, and I do recruitment, but my main area of focus is motivational speaking. And let me tell you why. Something like that. Don't go too deep too quickly. I think that's important. Why do you want this job? Okay, now this is where a lot of people shoot themselves in the foot, because what they will say, I'll take any job. Nobody wants to hire you for a great job when you say, I'll take any job. You need to have a very clear, concise, practiced answer to, why do I want this job? I want to be the key account sales executive for this packaging company, because firstly, you are market leaders. Secondly, I have worked in sales in the packaging industry. I've always looked up to your company. When I saw this position advertised, I thought it was my lucky day. I have admired your company from a distance. I've followed your progress over the last 5 years, and I'm just blown away to have this opportunity to meet you. I love packaging. I think it's fantastic. Whatever, you can imagine, why do you want this job? I think that's so important, to have a reason for this job, not just, well, I'll take any job. I don't mind. Nobody wants apathy. People want passion. So show the passion. I love bookkeeping. Why do you love bookkeeping? Since I was young, I've just loved order. To me, bookkeeping makes order out of the chaos. I love to know the exact numbers. I chase that last cent. To me, it's so exciting. Now, it's not exciting to me at all, but show them, if that's what you want, that's why you love what you do. Because in each business, there's so many different roles. We want to put the right people in the right role. You might want the company, but you might not want that job, and that they might be able to tell that. Why should we hire you? Now, this is where some people mess it up a little bit, because they'll say things like, well, I'm definitely the best person for the job. All the other applicants are not as good as me. You can't say that, because you don't know the other applicants. You can't be comparing, because obviously, it could be a job for somebody with 5 years experience with a degree in accounting. A lot of people have that. So you don't even know who your competition is most of the time. So all you can do is say, this is why I think I'd be great for this job, and start talking about 1 or 2 of your strengths. Don't go off on a long tangent, and also be careful of reading body language. When somebody's they're trying to interrupt, interject, trying to cut you off, it might mean that you are talking too much. You might be over expanding your answer. So you want fairly short and concise answers, but don't be too clipped. Don't do 1-word answers. Well, I'm organized. Maybe expand a little bit more. What can you do for us that other candidates can't? Well, you don't know what other candidates can or can't do, but maybe there's something, a special skill, a unique skill, something that people have complimented you on all the time. So here's an example. I have a lot of people saying, geez, you're really good under pressure. So let's just say that is the case. You could say, so many people tell me I'm really, really good under pressure. And I imagine that as a bookkeeper in this very, very busy company, I will be under pressure. I'll have to meet deadlines. I think that's what I would bring, is this unflappable, calm energy and this ability to meet deadlines no matter what. Because you can see where that's going. What's your greatest strength? Now, let's say that you are the most creative person and you're applying for a bookkeeper job, okay? To say, I'm so creative. That's not going to blow their hair back, because that's not really related. I don't think people want creative bookkeepers. They want them to follow the rules. So you might say, always apply the strengths you have. And remember, we all have more than one strength. So you could apply the strength to the role. I'm applying for a key account executive. So I could say, I love dealing with people. I think I'm a really good negotiator. I have an ability to open doors. I've got a vast network and I make great relationships. How I do this is by being a great listener. I'm a problem solver, and I really, really care that the client is happy. Something like that could be an answer. Now, what about this one? What is your greatest weakness? Oh my gosh. So this is where a lot of people blow it. The first time I had somebody say, oh, I don't have any weaknesses. I remember shaking her hand and saying, you're the first person I've ever met. No weaknesses. So you want to be able to say everybody has weaknesses. It's a lack of self-awareness if you say I have no weaknesses. So But now imagine, I'll give you an example. I was talking at a college a few years ago, asking people, what their weaknesses were. The one lady said, "Oh, I'm incredibly lazy." Okay. Another gent said to me, "I'm very, very moody." And another one said, "I really don't like people." Now, to be honest with you, all of those weaknesses are potential deal breakers. If you own a company, would you want to hire somebody who doesn't like people, especially if your company deals with people, which most companies do? Do you want to hire someone who's lazy? Do you want to hire someone who's moody? So just be careful of those things. So an example could be, I'll give you one. I've got so many weaknesses. One of mine is I'm incredibly impatient. I get road rage in the supermarket. Okay, so this is me. I'm impatient. And let me tell you why I'm impatient. At work, I love to exceed deadlines. I don't want to just get in at the last minute. I like to work under pressure, but I actually like to have a gap between the deadline and between getting the work in and the deadline, so that I don't like having unforeseen emergencies and errors. So I get impatient when I'm working and a colleague is not meeting my pace. I have an urgent pace, and I love to get things done as quickly as possible. Let's be honest, in a business, we want responsive people. We want people who have a sense of urgency about their work, and impatience isn't seen as the worst one. Now, bearing in mind, you might not be impatient. You might have another weakness. So some people will say to me, I'm actually not very good in an interview. That is possibly one of my weaknesses. I'm not very good at selling myself. I believe I'm really good at the job, but I do think a weakness is my first impression is possibly not the best, because I take a while to warm up to people. And I hope I'm not doing a bad job here, but I do feel that that is one of my weaknesses. I think that that can work to your favor. Also, when you're talking about a weaknesses, maybe what you can do is also say, this is what I'm doing to try and improve it. So I'll give you an example. I'm impatient when I'm in the traffic. I'm trying to get to a client meeting. You know what I do now? Instead of fuming and getting into a rage, I sit there and I listen to a podcast on my phone, or I've got really soothing music, or I see it as an opportunity to meditate or practice my breathing exercises, something like that, so that people can see, okay, this person is self-aware and they have the ability to improve and grow. Because one of the key limiting self-beliefs that people have is, that's just the way I am. We want people who can adapt and change. And right now, in this very agile world we're living in, we need people who are incredibly flexible. Another question that I've asked candidates myself is, if I hired you and I own the business, would you make me coffee? I know it's such a random question, and some of you might say, absolutely not. But I think where business is going at the moment is so many employers are looking for people who don't mind doing things that are out of their job description, basically doing whatever needs to be done. Because for many businesses right now, it's survival. We don't have enough people to do all the other jobs. So there's a lovely saying, a great man is always prepared to be little. So, why would you not be prepared to answer the switchboard, or make a cup of coffee, or empty a bin, or do something if that's what's needed in the organization? I think it's so important to put that across. And where I see some people tripping themselves up is often with the young graduates, where they will say things like, well, I've got my degree and I don't know why I should do that. I should be a manager. And that's not, nobody starts as a manager. If so, it's unlikely that they really are a manager. They might be a junior or a trainee, or it might just be a nice title that they got, but they probably are doing a lot of work that's not management. So why did you leave your job? Okay, so we don't badmouth. We don't say, oh, that employer was the worst person I've ever. You won't. Let me tell you 7 stories of how terrible they are. Nobody wants to hear that. And can I tell you, at least 1 in 7 or 8 people seems to badmouth their last boss. It makes you look bad. There's a lovely saying, what you say about another person reveals more about your character than theirs. So you don't want to come across as mean-spirited and somebody who's not very likable or very nice to people. So and it can't just be about the money. Well, I left the job because I'm needing at least another 1,000 Rand a month. That's not necessarily a great reason for leaving. I'm looking for better prospects. I'm looking for an opportunity where I can actually put my skills to better use, to the right use. Have a good reason why you left the company, or give the best possible reason without lying. And that's another thing. A lot of recruiters, a lot of hiring managers, if they catch you out having lied, it's a deal breaker. So say there's something negative to be said. So let's give a very bad example. You started having a relationship with your boss. Okay, something like that, which could be like, oh my gosh. But imagine if you went for an interview and they said, why did you leave? And you say, I started dating my boss, and there's a company policy that we cannot have relationships at work. And because I was more junior, I decided I would leave. If that's the truth, I think a lot of people would say, okay, that makes sense. I don't think that would be a complete and utter deal breaker. But what if you defrauded the company for 2 million rand and there was a criminal case against you and you were in jail? What do you do? So those are possibly the most awful situations that come up. And often I find that people who've got a bad situation like that often find it very, very hard to get back into the job market. In a job market where people can choose the best of the best, a lot of people are not prepared to take a chance on somebody who's proven that they were untrustworthy. So there's a saying in recruitment, past behavior is the best predictor of future behavior. So if you've done well in every job in the past, you probably will do well again. If you've stayed 1 year at the last 15 jobs, in job number 16, you'll probably stay 1 year. So we're looking for patterns. We're also looking for growth. So your job that you're in now, say it's your 5th job. Your first job should have been at a lower level, second job, third job, fourth job, fifth job. There should be career progression because we're looking for achievers. How do you know if somebody's an achiever? You ask them about their achievements. So if somebody says, I'm an achiever, and you say, well, tell me what you're proud of achieving, and they can't tell you, they're not an achiever. Okay. So things like salary expectations, so difficult because obviously now we're stuck. We want to get the job. Say we're thinking, I know I'd love to get 20,000 Rand a month, but I'm sure they're only going to pay 15. What do I do? Do I ask for 20 or do I ask for 15? Sometimes we don't put the line in the sand. We wait for the employer to say, listen, I'm sure you offer a market-related salary. For this role, I'm really looking for the opportunity. It's not only about the money. I'm looking to join the company. Obviously, as you know, my last salary was 16,000 Rand. I know I wouldn't like to go backwards, but I'm very, very open to the opportunity, and I am negotiable because I know that within a very short space of time, I will prove myself. So there you're not limiting yourself to sort of, because imagine if you said 15 and they think, geez, we were happy to offer 20 and there was money on the table, but you also don't want to be that person that's outpriced. We see that so often where they've asked for too much. And remember that, be careful. This is where sales reps trip themselves up. Okay, a sales rep who gets commission will often talk about their best month. So how much commission do you make? Oh, about 20,000 Rand a month. Oh, fantastic. Give me your last 6 months pay slips. Guess what we'll find? Only 1 month had 20,000. A lot of the months didn't. So be careful because in situations like that, you've got to back it up with proof. So rather be honest and say, you know what, in the last 6 months, it was quite tough with COVID. I think I had one great month, but before that, I had some good ones. Or just to say, listen, I didn't do very well in commission. And I think it was because of A, B, and C. Rather be honest than be deceptive. And then just the last couple of things.
Okay.
Why do you want to work here? It's important. Why do I want to work here? Not I want to work. And people ask you about your goals. Do you have goals? Those are things you can work out before. You know, in 5 years' time, I want to buy my first home. You know, I'd like to grow in an organization. I'd love to get into middle management. I'd like to study my MBA in 3 years' time. I'd like to do another diploma or degree. I'd like to become a fundi on Excel, you know, whatever those things are. And just be comfortable with silence. And then before we just take questions, I just wanted to do one thing, and there is something called behavioral interviewing. So employers going to ask you a question like, give us a time. It's called the STAR, a situation, a time, an action, and the results. So say, for instance, we need somebody who's high pressure, who can work in a high pressure environment. So tell us a time in the last 6 months where you had a difficult client, you were under pressure, and you had to do whatever it takes to make that client happy. Can you give us a situation where you were under pressure, but you managed to make the client happy? So that's possibly dealing with customer service, working with pressure. Now, you say, oh, I'm brilliant at customer service and I'm brilliant under pressure, and you have been working in the last 6 months. If you cannot come up with an answer, it's very possible that you haven't delivered excellent customer service under pressure. So, and that's why we do those. We're trying to draw out of you an example of where you've put it in practice. Because I'll give you an example of bad interviewing. So I could say, are you energetic? You look energetic. And you go, yes, I am. You look friendly. Do you like people? And, so we don't want to put words into candidates' mouths. So what happens often is they won't tell you about what they need in the position. They'll ask you all about yourself. And then afterwards, they'll say, this is the role. And then do you have any questions? Because let's be honest, if they said, we need a bubbly, confident, dynamic sales executive, describe yourself. Then you go, I'm bubbly, dynamic, and confident. So people want you to be giving your true answers, So be prepared to be tested. At the end of the interview, ask what's the next step. Send a little email a day or so later just to say, thank you so much. And then you might even end at the closing statement to say, thank you so much for this opportunity to come for an interview with your packaging company. As I said earlier, I'm so delighted, and I really, really hope that I have an opportunity to get this job. And I hope I've portrayed to you that I think I'm a great candidate for the role. Thank you. And I think those are simple things to do. And I think really what we're trying to do in that interview is connect with people. No lies. We want to put our best foot forward, but we're not being deceptive. I think that's the most important thing. And even talking to you about interview skills, I'm always mindful of the fact that we don't want to be rote. We don't want to be a little puppet on a stage, because this person that's come in the interview needs to be the person that arrives on day 1, day 2, day 30, day 90, day 200. So it's got to be your best version of you. So I think I'm going to hand over back to Dr. Blom, because I know there's been loads of questions, and
Yes.
hopefully you can answer a few. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Cindy. I'm going to go straight to the Q&A, and then I'll just run through the question to see how far we go. The first, let me just get there. So, yeah, can it be a problem if you come across as too confident?
Yes. So I think you can. I have often interviewed candidates who are very smooth. There's a saying that some people's skill is that they can interview well, and then after that, it's all downhill from there. So I think when somebody comes across as too slick, too prepared, too suave, just oh yes, I've got this. I think where they like, oh yes, you're so lucky to have me on the interview. I think people like to see a certain amount of nerves, a little bit, just a dose of it, and somebody who's aspiring for the job, rather than, oh, I know I'll get this job, I'm not sure if I want it. That doesn't go down well at all. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the opposite then. There's somebody who considers herself as an introvert. I think you've touched a little bit on that. I mean, I think the straight answer to that is just prepare very well, because if you feel confident about what you've researched and what you're going to say, then it's, even if you are an introvert, it won't come across as being unprepared. I don't know if you agree with that.
Yeah, and remember that a lot of people interviewing you will also be introverts. So they're going to be sitting there also and identifying with you. Not everybody's loud and extroverted. And also there are major skills to being an introvert. So, I'm a good listener. I'm normally on the other side. I don't like speaking about myself, but I prefer to show it by my actions, how good I am at a role. And I'd like to think that within a few weeks of working with me, you will see what value I have to offer the company. I don't speak out of turn. I'm not impatient. I'm a good, as I said, a good listener. I'm quietly confident. So I think those are skills that we could sort of just look at. What are the positive sides of being an introvert?
Correct. Yeah. Okay, so here's a question. Sometimes we may happen to come up with a CV which do not match. Oh dear. You know, Pooja, I see your question. That this particular question was actually answered in the previous webinar. And if you allow us, we will send you the link to that webinar, and then you can go and because that was about the CV. And I'd rather go on now. There's something else. Does a PI test always reflect your true personality?
Most of the time they do. But I would say that the most important thing is if you are doing a personality test um, or an assessment, answer it truthfully, how you really are, not how you think it needs to be answered. Because there's probably about 2 to 3% of these where people actually try and distort it, they try and manipulate it, and then it can come out as a crushed profile. But generally, they are very accurate. They've been a test for bias, for validity.
Yes.
And yeah, a lot of companies, I have a lot of companies that will do the first interview, they will do the psychs, they'll do the psychometric assessments, and only very few people get through them because they are very clear about what they're looking for in candidates. Yes.
True. Yeah. Okay, so here's one that is what happens if you're or you seem to be more qualified or overqualified, especially in terms of the person who's interviewing you. Well, how do you deal with that?
Sometimes, a lot of people will say, I didn't get the job because I'm overqualified and I intimidated the interviewer. That actually doesn't happen a lot of the time. Often what happens is the person is overqualified and the employer is concerned that that person will only stay in that lower level job or in that lower paid job until they find a good opportunity. So it's up to that candidate to explain to the employer why they would like that role and what it's meeting in terms of their needs. So it could be, let's use an example. It's a woman who's got 2 children at home and she could be a financial manager, but she's applying for a role of senior bookkeeper. And they go, but why would you want this job? You're overqualified. And that person could say, yes, I am, but my husband's got a very demanding role and I'm there to support him at the moment in this season. And I also have 2 young children. So I want a job where I can finish at 4:30 and come home and then do my other job. Or it could be a case of, you know what, let me be honest. In the market, there's not a lot of markets for the rocket scientist that I am, but I would love to be a lab assistant in your company because I love working in a lab. I never studied this for the money. I studied this for the experience, and it's my happy place. So, but let's be honest, if you are overqualified and too expensive, that is always a concern for an employer. Will you stay? And I think what you need to do is explain to them why you think you will stay. But then if you are intimidating the person, what you want to do is you could also compliment the interviewer, and not in a condescending manner, but gee, that person's in that senior role. They've earned their way into that role. So you could say, wow, you could just say something about, that's fantastic that, I'd love to work for somebody like you. You seem really, really, it would be great to work with somebody with your skills and experience and your leadership ability. Or, I've Googled you and I think what you've got to offer is so impressive. I would love to work under you, to show the person you're humble. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, I think that's always a good one. Okay, so here's a very technical question about whether it is normal for a current reporting manager to sit in on a candidate's interview for the same division. I mean, so it's within the
Another
same
division.
company. Yeah.
It might be normal if that current manager is maybe in HR and adopting a bit of a line function. Maybe this person was never going to get the job. Maybe they don't want to lose them in that division. So that might be the case. Yeah, but it's you would almost think that the other division would then they would interview, because then it's coming from a fresh perspective, which would appear to be fair and unbiased. So we are interviewing all the candidates, not that interviewer already knows how the candidate works. So they shouldn't be interviewing. Yeah, that does seem odd.
It does seem a bit strange. Okay, so we did speak about not sounding desperate. That's a very specific. How do you answer a question of, do you drink? That's a good one. In other words, how much alcohol do you use? Or do you use alcohol?
Yeah, I think that's quite a normal question. It's an unusual question. I think not many people ask that, but I think what you're finding is, I mean, some companies do breathalyzer tests every single day. I think what people are looking for is they want people of fairly sober habits. I think if somebody drinks a single whiskey every night, that's not a deal breaker at all. You know, so I would say that's not a problem. But you might find some companies, they really don't want to attract people who are hungover every day and can't do their work, or who are going to be wanting Mondays off because they've had a weekend of partying. So I think it says a lot about the person if they say, like, you know, a question is, what are your hobbies? And if somebody says,
Yes.
well, I like camping and surfing and being outdoors, and another person says, I go night clubbing every weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, a lot of employers would go for the candidate who is more clean living as such. But it shouldn't be a deal
Yes.
breaker
No.
unless the interviewer is very conservative and has those values. Yeah.
Of course. And maybe the company does have, then also has those values.
Possibly. Yeah.
Okay, so this one is interesting, is do I accept the water if it's offered? I never
Yes.
know if it's unprofessional to drink during an interview, or is it rude to decline?
I think it's good to have some water. I tell you why. Most people in an interview will actually, their mouths will become dry because they get nervous. So if there's water there, it'll actually help you. So say yes. But the one thing I would say is don't accept coffee. I'll give you an example. I've had some companies where they offer the coffee to the candidate. The person who's making the coffee takes so long to make the coffee and bring it through that by the time the coffee arrives, the interview is now done and dusted. And the person, I had a candidate say they literally burnt their whole esophagus trying to drink coffee in an interview because now the employer was like, well, drink your coffee. So I would rather say just some water, thanks. Even if you're desperate for a cup of coffee, I would say that.
Oh,
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. So here's a cute one. So apparently there was a question in the interview: if you can be any kitchen utensil, what will you be and why? And
Yeah,
I
you
just think
know,
it's an interesting
it's
one.
like it's you know what they're doing. And again, if you were an animal, what would you be? If you were a color, what would you be? There's no right or wrong answer. It's just about, can you think on your feet and can you justify your answer? So if you were
Yeah.
a color, what would you be? I'd be yellow. Why? Because I love sunny days. I mean, you know, I think it's, but
Yes.
rather than somebody sitting there squirming, if you get a nonsensical question, just try and come up with a flower. You know, they're not going to judge you and go, oh, well, they said spoon, wrong answer. I don't think that, I think it would
True.
just be just checking to see, can you think on your feet? And for some jobs, like if you're in sales, you have to, you'll have a client throwing a curveball at you and you've got to answer quickly. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So this is another one that says, am I allowed, if the interview is too heavy for me, to ask for 2 minutes
No,
breather?
no.
No, no, you've got
You
to
have one shot, you
soldier
know.
through.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. And I do understand what you're saying. You know, you might be feeling so stressed, but you know, just don't do that because you've blown it. Basically, it's like, I don't know if you've ever watched Idols. Somebody will start singing a song and then they'll go, oh, no. Let me try again. They've blown it, you know. So
Yeah,
um,
no.
so just keep going, keep going. Ask for a glass of water if necessary, or just ask for a pause. Like, do you mind if I can just give me a sec? Let me think about the answer to this. And that's okay. But don't ask, can I leave the room? Can I take a break? That definitely
Yeah.
won't go down well.
No, that
Yeah,
won't work. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So there's one maybe that we can come back to. What role does social media like LinkedIn play in recruitment today? Yeah, okay. Maybe see if we
Can I
could.
just mention that quickly? So a lot of people are being stalked. Part of the recruitment process, whether you realize it or not, is that people will check you out and they'll look at all your platforms and profiles, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram,
Yes.
mainly. If you
Yes.
have a lot of things on your Facebook account that you think, gosh, I don't think an employer would hire me, then make it private so that they can't look at it, or clean it up. I think that's an important
Agree.
thing. And then
I
remember,
agree.
I love that question. If you were to post something on social media, what would your pastor say, your parents, your principal, and your prospective employer? And would you like it on a billboard? And I think that's great advice. In recruitment, we often do social media checks on candidates, and we discover things that are incongruent with the person that displayed themselves in the interview. And
Yeah.
nobody likes incongruence because then it suggests that something is off. Were they lying in the interview or is their social media wrong? And in all
Yeah.
cases, they were probably just displaying their best foot forward, but to the point where they're not being real. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think you've kind of dealt with this one, but it will probably be our last one. So let's see. How do you deal with someone telling you that they were dismissed from their previous job? Is that necessarily a deal breaker?
Not necessarily. It's never a good thing, let's be honest. But often it can be explained. So it could be I was a whistleblower, or I was dismissed because we had a difference of opinion, and for me it was a principal issue, and or I was right, but I did it the wrong way. I think the question is, why were they dismissed? I was
Yeah,
dismissed
yeah.
because I defrauded 2 million rand. Well, that's a
Yeah,
deal
it's
breaker
kind
in
of,
my
yeah,
opinion.
that is,
and
yeah,
and
yeah.
also just be careful. If you did have something terrible happen, people are more likely to forgive you about it if you tell them honestly in the interview than lying and then they found out in your reference. So
Yes,
let's just say
yeah,
I left the job on great terms,
yes.
phoned my ex-boss for a reference, and then the ex-boss says you were the worst employee they've ever seen. That's a deal breaker as well, because then it's like, well, what else are you lying about? So
Yes,
just
yeah,
be
yeah.
careful. You've got to be honest and upfront. And as I say, it's not about um, having a canned interview. It's not about uh, putting such an act on that it's not the real you.
Mm, mm, mm. Okay, and I think let's make this the last one, because that's is often about body language and so on. So it says, please explain the importance of appearance when attending interviews, like dress code, face makeup, hairstyles, tattoos, and so on.
Okay, so tattoos are an interesting one because remember, people are going to judge you in the 7 seconds that it takes. I would probably say you had a tattoo on your arm. I would probably cover that up for the interview, okay? And it's not about lying. It's about them getting to see you as the person. So you're going to wear a beautiful long
Not,
sleeve shirt and tie, or a beautiful jacket or something like that. You're going to, if you're a lady, you're going to wear some form of makeup, have your hair done, good shoes, heels, socks that match your shoes and match your pants, not Michael Jackson socks, the black pants, black shoes, and the white socks. Or
white
um,
socks.
yeah, just something that's neat. Deodorant, brush teeth. So you've just got a really important, great first impression. And remember, you're going to dress according to the culture of the company. You always dress one level above the role you're applying for. You're going to dress conservatively more than outlandishly, unless you're going for a trendy ad agency where if you went in a tie, they'd go, dude, what are you doing? We don't want to hire
Yeah,
you. But
yeah,
if it's a
yeah,
law
yeah.
firm or an accounting firm or a firm or corporate company, you want to dress conservatively.
Okay, I think, Cindy, unfortunately, again, we have run out of time. We have all the questions in the question and answer chat area. So we will be able to go through all of them and to some extent, either answer them directly, or, you can choose from there which one of those questions are the best for the mentoring prize. Secondly, also, I just want to remind everybody that you will all receive an ebook and a certificate of attendance at the end of this session. So in the next few days, this will all be arranged, and you will get information about that. So really, all it, again, Cindy, time flies when you're having fun, and we have been having fun. So thank you very much. Your knowledge and experience in this field is just absolutely incredible, and I do think you must write a book.
Oh, thank
Another
you very
one.
much.
No,
Thank you
you
very
must,
much. Yeah.
absolutely, because I think it's incredibly valuable, and it seems like common sense, but still people make mistakes so easily, and then like you say, you've blown it. You've got one opportunity, and then you've blown it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to the participants that we couldn't take any hands that were being raised. As you can see, we are so rushed for time. And so all I still have to say is thank you very much, Cindy, and we appreciate your time and effort that you've made to spend time with us, and also for the generous time that you're going to spend with one or two candidates. So thank you very much,
My
everybody,
pleasure.
and we'll talk again soon. Thanks.